Imagine history not as a dusty timeline of kings and emperors, but as a living story shaped by voices we rarely hear. Behind the thrones, beyond the crowns, there were partners whose influence changed nations, shifted cultures, and secured the survival of monarchies. These figures did not always wear armor or command armies, yet their presence was often the deciding force in whether dynasties flourished or collapsed. From the cunning diplomacy of Eleanor of Aquitaine to the vision of Isabella of Castile, from Victoria's quiet reinvention of monarchy to the modern advocacy of Queen Letizia and Queen Camilla, the thread is clear. Power is never just about who sits on the throne, but also about who stands beside them. We often imagine queens and consorts as ceremonial, bound by tradition and detached from real influence. But what if the story has always been different? What if their subtle choices, their alliances, and even their public images shaped the very fabric of history? In the 21st century, their role may look different, yet the essence remains. They are still the anchors of continuity, the voices of compassion, and the faces that keep royalty relevant in a world that constantly questions its purpose. Their philanthropy, their strategic appearances, and their ability to humanize centuries of tradition prove that power does not always need to be loud to be lasting. Welcome to our channel Words of Time. In this video, we will uncover the hidden world of royal partners, exploring how queens and consorts across centuries have shaped legacies, influenced nations, and ensured that monarchy continues to endure. Stay with us as we reveal the untold side of royalty, the power that works quietly, yet leaves echoes through history. When most people think of royal power, they picture crowns, thrones, and men and women seated upon them as kings and queens. The stories that fill history books often highlight coronations, conquests, treaties, and open displays of might. Yet there has always been another dimension to monarchy, one that does not receive as much attention, but is equally important in shaping events. That hidden dimension lies in the lives and choices of royal wives and consorts who rarely held official authority, but influenced the direction of nations. Their stories often remain behind a veil, partly because many chroniclers were men who valued battles and laws over conversations in court chambers, and partly because their work was indirect, woven into relationships and personal bonds. When examined closely, these women emerge as strategic actors whose intelligence, patience, and ability to build alliances altered history in profound ways. Marriage itself was never just a personal matter in royal families. In kingdoms where survival depended on securing borders and uniting factions, a marriage was a political treaty wrapped in ceremony. Daughters of noble houses were raised with the expectation that their future marriages would serve dynastic purposes. Their education, behavior, and even their faith could be shaped to suit these alliances. A royal wife might arrive from a distant land carrying with her not only her dowry, but also the hopes of peace between two rivals. While on the surface she might appear as a passive gift exchange between families, in practice she often became the living link that kept negotiations alive or prevented wars from reigniting. Her personal loyalty, her ability to mediate, and the trust she built with her husband and his council mattered in ways that cannot be captured by simple records of treaties. The Byzantine Empire offers one of the most striking examples of how a royal wife could act as more than a ceremonial figure. Empress Theodora, wife of Emperor Justinian, is remembered not just as a partner, but as a formidable political force in her own right. She began life far from the circles of nobility, and yet her intelligence and determination propelled her into the highest position in the empire. When the empire faced the violent Nika riots, it was Theodora who reportedly refused to flee, inspiring Justinian and his generals to stand firm. Her resolve saved the throne and possibly the empire itself. Beyond moments of crisis, she influenced legal reforms, especially those concerning the rights of women. Laws that protected women from exploitation and granted them greater security in marriage bear her mark. Though her name is not always listed beside Justinian's famous code, her contribution cannot be separated from the legal transformations of that era. A different kind of story is told through Catherine the Great of Russia. Unlike Theodora, she began her life already within noble circles, though not Russian. Born as a German princess, she entered Russia through marriage to the future Emperor Peter. That union was supposed to strengthen ties between royal houses, but Catherine turned it into something much greater. When her husband proved unfit to rule, she took control through careful planning and won the support of both the military and influential nobles. Catherine transformed herself from a foreign bride into one of Russia's most celebrated rulers. She embraced Russian culture, supported reforms, expanded territory, and became a central figure in Europe's political scene. Her power was not handed to her by birthright as a Russian monarch, but was achieved by leveraging her position as wife, then widow, and finally sovereign in her own right. These examples highlight one of the most important truths about royal wives. They were rarely passive. Even when not formally ruling, they often became confidants, advisors, and in many cases, the true decision-makers behind the throne. A queen consort might lack a crown of her own, but her words could sway kings, her relationships with nobles could smooth over rebellion, and her cultural patronage could transform the identity of a kingdom. When seen this way, royal marriages were not only about producing heirs or securing peace. They were opportunities for women to carve out spheres of influence, often hidden from the public, but decisive nonetheless. One cannot ignore the cultural influence these women had. When a princess moved to a new land, she carried with her traditions, languages, and customs. By introducing foreign practices into her new home, she sometimes altered the cultural direction of entire nations. Consider the many queens from Spain, France, and Italy who married into other royal houses. Through them, art, fashion, music, and even cuisine spread across borders. Their patronage of painters, musicians, and architects left legacies that shaped how future generations understood beauty and refinement. Behind the glitter of court festivals and the elegance of palaces were queens who made choices about whom to sponsor and which artistic movements to support. These decisions could shift cultural centers and inspire movements that lasted long after their lifetimes. The personal qualities of these women mattered as much as the circumstances they found themselves in. Some consorts wielded influence through charm and personal relationships, others through intellectual ability and shrewd observation. Many learned to navigate court intrigue, balancing rival factions, keeping allies loyal, and preventing opponents from undermining their families. At times they acted as mediators between their husbands and discontented nobles, offering compromises that avoided bloodshed. At other times, they served as the steadying hand when kings were indecisive or impulsive. While official histories may record the names of male advisors, it is often the case that the queen's private advice carried equal weight. The medieval period offers countless illustrations. In England, Eleanor of Aquitaine stands as one of the most remarkable figures. She first married the King of France, then later the King of England, bringing with her vast lands that changed the balance of power in Europe. Her marriages were political events of the highest order, yet her influence extended far beyond land. Eleanor was a patron of literature and the arts, and she played a direct role in politics, at times even leading armies. Though her relationships with her husbands and children were often stormy, she never faded into the background. Instead, she demonstrated how a royal wife could command loyalty in her own right, shaping both political and cultural landscapes. In other parts of the world, similar stories unfold. In Japan, empresses and consorts shaped court politics through networks of kinship and alliances between noble families. Their influence was subtle, exercised through arranging marriages for their children, guiding court ceremonies, and supporting Buddhist institutions that lent legitimacy to their families. In India, the Mughal court witnessed the strength of figures like Nur Jahan, who effectively governed alongside her husband Jahangir. She issued orders, engaged in diplomacy, and oversaw trade. Coins were even minted in her name, a rare acknowledgement of her prominence in a world that officially recognized her husband as emperor. Her story is one of the clearest proofs that behind the title of wife lay the capacity to wield sovereign-like authority. The importance of marriage as a diplomatic tool cannot be overstated. European history is filled with alliances secured not by battle, but by weddings. A marriage between a Spanish princess and a French prince could halt wars and open trade. These unions were celebrated in grand ceremonies, but their long-term success depended on the personal strength of the women involved. If a queen managed to maintain correspondence with her natal family, she could keep political channels open. If she persuaded her husband to adopt a more conciliatory policy, she could prevent decades of conflict. The human element of these alliances is often forgotten in lists of treaties, yet it was often the queen who ensured that peace endured beyond the first year of marriage. Even in situations where a royal wife appeared powerless, her role in producing and educating heirs was central to the survival of dynasties. The upbringing of future kings and queens was often entrusted to mothers. Through their choices of tutors, the values they emphasized, and the stories they told, they shaped the rulers of tomorrow. A queen might not sit on the throne, but she could mold the character of the one who eventually would. This maternal influence is difficult to measure, yet it was one of the most enduring forms of power. A generation of wise rulers could be traced back to the patience and vision of their mothers, while neglect or poor guidance could doom a dynasty to chaos. The recognition of these hidden powerhouses is slowly increasing in modern scholarship. Historians are re-examining sources, reading between the lines of chronicles, and uncovering letters that reveal the voices of these women. It has become clearer that the traditional narrative, which often ignored or minimized their impact, was incomplete. Theodora was not simply a supportive wife, she was a co-ruler. Catherine was not merely a foreign consort, she was an architect of empire. Eleanor was not just a duchess married into royal circles, she was a cultural and political leader. Nur Jahan was not just an ornament in the Mughal court, she was a stateswoman with command over policy. Their lives remind us that history has always been more complex than the official records suggest. By focusing on these figures, we also gain a deeper understanding of power itself. Authority is not always about visible control, issuing decrees, or leading armies. It can be about influence, persuasion, resilience, and the ability to shape decisions without leaving signatures on official documents. The hidden powerhouses of history remind us that behind every crown there are networks of relationships, and within those networks, women have often played decisive roles. They may not always have been recognized as sovereigns, but they were often the ones who guided sovereigns through crises, ensured continuity, and preserved stability. To see their contributions clearly, we must broaden our definition of leadership. If leadership means guiding others, shaping visions, and ensuring survival through uncertain times, then queens and consorts were leaders in every sense. They may have lacked the formal recognition that their husbands enjoyed, but their influence was real and lasting. Every dynasty owes part of its legacy to the women who stood beside the throne, whispering counsel, building alliances, and sometimes seizing the reins outright. Their power was not less because it was hidden. In many ways, it was more enduring, for it operated in the quiet spaces where history is made, but not always recorded. Eleanor of Aquitaine stands out as one of the most remarkable women of the medieval world, embodying the full scope of what it meant to be a hidden powerhouse in an age when women were not expected to play overt political roles. Her life story is extraordinary not only because of her personal resilience, but also because of her direct influence on the shaping of medieval European politics. From her position as Duchess of Aquitaine to her roles as Queen of France and later Queen of England, she managed to remain at the center of power for decades, shaping alliances, guiding policies, and setting in motion events that would affect Europe for generations. She was not content to remain in the background, nor was she content to allow men alone to define the course of history. Instead, Eleanor carved out a place for herself where her voice could not be ignored. Her journey began in the rich lands of Aquitaine, one of the most prosperous regions in Europe. Inheriting her duchy at a young age placed her immediately among the most eligible women in Christendom. Control of Aquitaine meant vast wealth, powerful vassals, and strategic importance, and any marriage she entered into would carry weight far beyond personal affection. Her first marriage was to Louis, the King of France, and this union symbolized the merging of two great powers. From the outset, Eleanor understood that her position was more than ceremonial. As queen, she was expected to accompany her husband on diplomatic tours, to engage with nobles, and to act as a visible link between the monarchy and the people. Yet she was also aware of her own identity as Duchess of Aquitaine, a title that carried with it a separate authority and independence. Unlike many queens whose titles were derived entirely from their husbands, Eleanor brought her own dominion into the marriage, and this gave her leverage. Her marriage to Louis, however, was far from harmonious. Louis was deeply pious and often more concerned with religious duties than political strategy, while Eleanor was pragmatic and bold, unafraid to express her opinions on matters of governance. The differences between them became even more pronounced during the Second Crusade. Eleanor did not remain behind in France, as many queens might have, but instead accompanied her husband to the Holy Land. This was not just symbolic support, but an active role in the enterprise. She gathered her own vassals, led them across the perilous journey, and was said to inspire loyalty and admiration from those who followed her. Yet her presence also sparked controversy. Medieval chroniclers, who often disapproved of women asserting themselves, accused her of overstepping her place and even spreading scandal. Some described her as taking too much influence in military decisions, which did not align with traditional expectations. The failure of the crusade was partly blamed on her, though in truth the expedition was undermined by poor planning and deeper political divisions. Still, the episode reveals how visible and assertive she was, refusing to be sidelined in affairs of international importance. The annulment of her marriage to Louis marked a turning point. She left the French court without losing her titles and within weeks secured another marriage, this time to Henry Plantagenet, who would soon become Henry II of England. This bold move reshaped the balance of power in Europe. With Eleanor's duchy now tied to the English crown, England gained control of vast lands in France, a territorial expansion that altered the map and created the foundation for centuries of conflict between the two kingdoms. Eleanor was not merely a passive participant in this union. She saw in Henry a man of ambition and strength, someone whose drive matched her own. Their partnership, however turbulent, was a political masterstroke that positioned England as a dominant continental power. Eleanor's role as Queen of England was multifaceted. She supported Henry in the consolidation of his empire, but she also retained a measure of independence. Aquitaine remained hers, and she continued to rule it with authority. The nobles of the duchy recognized her leadership, and she kept direct control over its administration, which was unusual for queens of the period. She acted as a mediator between her vassals and her husband, ensuring that Aquitaine maintained its distinct identity within the larger Angevin Empire. This balancing act required diplomatic skill, for the interests of Aquitaine did not always align with those of England. Eleanor's ability to maintain this dual role, queen on one hand and duchess on the other, demonstrates her rare political acumen. Her influence extended into questions of succession. She and Henry had a large family, and the inheritance of their lands was a matter of enormous importance. Eleanor's position as mother placed her at the center of disputes between her sons and their father. She sided with her sons during periods of rebellion, believing that Henry's control over them was excessive and that their future rights were being undermined. In one of the most dramatic episodes of her life, she was imprisoned by Henry for supporting her sons in revolt. Yet even in captivity, her importance did not wane. She was too valuable a figure to be completely silenced. When Henry died and their son Richard the Lionheart ascended the throne, Eleanor was released and immediately returned to prominence. She became not just the mother of the king but his trusted advisor, playing a central role in the governance of the realm while Richard pursued his campaigns abroad. Richard's absence during the Third Crusade placed Eleanor in a position of extraordinary responsibility. She acted as regent, overseeing England's affairs and ensuring stability in his name. She managed finances, dealt with nobles, and even negotiated with foreign powers to secure Richard's release when he was captured on his return journey. Few medieval queens held such tangible power, and Eleanor exercised it with authority and effectiveness. Her experience, combined with her network of alliances, made her indispensable. Even when Richard's reign ended and their youngest son John took the throne, Eleanor remained an influential presence, supporting him in critical moments and lending legitimacy to his rule. Through her guidance of her children's reigns, she ensured that her legacy extended beyond her own lifetime. Beyond the sphere of politics, Eleanor shaped culture in profound ways. Her court in Aquitaine was famous for its patronage of the arts, particularly poetry and music. She encouraged troubadours, poets, and chroniclers, fostering an environment where ideas of chivalry and courtly love flourished. These cultural movements spread across Europe, influencing literature for centuries. The very idea of romantic love, as it was later celebrated in poetry and stories, owes much to the atmosphere she created in her court. Her support of artists and writers was not a mere pastime, but a deliberate cultivation of a cultural identity that enhanced her prestige and softened the rough edges of feudal power. In this way, Eleanor combined political strategy with cultural vision, understanding that influence was not only about armies and treaties, but also about the stories people told and the ideals they aspired to. Her diplomatic skills were equally remarkable. She was not only a bridge between France and England, but also an active participant in international relations. Through her daughters, she arranged marriages that linked England to powerful houses across Europe. These unions created networks of alliance that extended her influence far beyond her own domains. She maintained correspondence with leaders across Christendom, ensuring that she was always informed and always positioned to act. Her ability to manipulate alliances, to know when to reconcile and when to resist, gave her an enduring presence in a political world dominated by men. Time and again, she proved that her survival and success came from her intelligence and foresight. The image of Eleanor that comes down to us is one of resilience. She endured personal betrayals, political setbacks, imprisonment, and the constant scrutiny of chroniclers who often judged her harshly for stepping beyond the boundaries of her gender. Yet she never faded into obscurity. From her youth in Aquitaine to her old age, when she continued to travel on diplomatic missions well into her 80s, Eleanor remained active, respected, and influential. Her long life gave her a rare perspective, allowing her to witness and shape the destinies of two kingdoms and to see her descendants spread across Europe's royal houses. Eleanor's legacy is not simply that of a queen who held unusual power. It is the legacy of a woman who demonstrated how personal determination, intelligence, and adaptability could carve out a place in a world that denied women formal authority. She redefined what it meant to be a consort, showing that a queen could be as much a statesperson as any king. She left behind not only dynastic heirs but also cultural and political patterns that shaped Europe long after her death. Her story embodies the idea of the hidden powerhouse, a figure whose influence was not always written in laws or inscribed in monuments, but who nevertheless changed the course of history. When we consider Eleanor alongside figures like Theodora, Catherine the Great, and Nur Jahan, we begin to see a larger pattern. These women, despite differences in culture, geography, and circumstance, shared the ability to seize opportunities, to navigate obstacles, and to leave indelible marks on their societies. They remind us that power often operates in spaces beyond official recognition. Their stories expand our understanding of history, not as a simple record of kings and battles, but as a tapestry woven by many hands, including those that worked quietly, persistently, and with profound effect. Isabella of Castile belongs in the same lineage of hidden powerhouses as Eleanor of Aquitaine, yet her story illustrates how a woman could move even further beyond the role of consort to become the architect of a dynasty and the co-creator of a nation. Where Eleanor maneuvered between two great kingdoms and ensured her legacy through children and cultural patronage, Isabella stood beside Ferdinand of Aragon and transformed a divided Iberian peninsula into the foundation of modern Spain. Her achievements were not accidental or peripheral, but the result of deliberate strategy, unwavering resolve, and an ability to combine vision with practical action. She was a woman who believed in her destiny, and she fought tirelessly to secure it, shaping the course of European and global history in ways that continue to resonate. Isabella was not born with the expectation of becoming queen. As the daughter of John of Castile, she lived her early life somewhat removed from the direct line of succession. Yet dynastic instability opened a path for her. Castile had long been torn by factional disputes, weak kingship, and rival claims, and Isabella's strength lay in her ability to navigate these dangerous waters. She understood that legitimacy was not enough. She had to build support among nobles, clergy, and the common people. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon was both a personal union and a masterstroke of diplomacy. By aligning herself with Ferdinand, she tied Castile to Aragon, effectively uniting two of the most powerful realms of the Iberian Peninsula. While the union did not erase their distinct institutions, it created the framework of a joint monarchy that could act with greater strength and coordination than either kingdom alone. This partnership was remarkable in its balance. Unlike many royal marriages in which the queen was expected to defer, Isabella insisted on shared authority. Their marriage contract explicitly recognized her equal status, and she guarded her right to co-rule fiercely. Both monarchs signed documents, both appeared on coinage, and both were addressed in matters of state. It was this dual sovereignty that laid the groundwork for a stable union, preventing either Castile or Aragon from being absorbed into the other. The image of Isabella and Ferdinand as the Catholic monarchs symbolized not only their religious devotion but also their joint authority. Isabella's insistence on parity was crucial because it allowed her to implement her vision rather than merely support her husband's ambitions. Her vision was sweeping and uncompromising. She sought to establish a kingdom defined by unity, stability, and faith. Religion was not a private matter for Isabella. It was the binding element of her political project. The Reconquista, the centuries-long effort to drive Muslim powers from the Iberian Peninsula, reached its culmination under her reign. Isabella did not simply delegate these campaigns to generals. She personally accompanied armies, oversaw logistics, and ensured discipline. Chroniclers describe her traveling with the troops, attending councils of war, and maintaining morale. When Granada, the last Muslim stronghold, surrendered in the year 1492, it was Isabella as much as Ferdinand who could claim victory. The fall of Granada was not only a military achievement, but also a symbolic act, presenting the monarchs as defenders of Christendom and unifiers of Spain. Religious unity, however, was not secured by conquest alone. Isabella believed that a strong and stable kingdom required a single faith, and to achieve this she supported the establishment of the Spanish Inquisition. This institution has become infamous for its harsh methods, but in Isabella's eyes it was a tool for consolidation. By targeting conversos suspected of secretly practicing Judaism or Islam, the Inquisition sought to eliminate internal divisions that might weaken the monarchy. It also reinforced the bond between the crown and the Catholic Church, giving Isabella and Ferdinand the title of Catholic monarchs bestowed by the Pope. While modern perspectives often focus on the cruelty of the Inquisition, its role in strengthening royal authority in the 15th century is undeniable. For Isabella, the Inquisition was not merely about religious conformity, but about building a monarchy with a unified identity that could stand against both internal rivals and external threats. Yet Isabella's genius was not confined to the Iberian Peninsula. She possessed a sense of global possibility that was unusual for her time. When Christopher Columbus approached her with his plan to reach Asia by sailing west, he had been turned away by other courts. Isabella, however, saw the potential in his vision. Despite skepticism from advisors, she chose to finance his voyage. This decision, modest in immediate cost, altered the trajectory of world history. Columbus's expedition in the year 1492 did not reach Asia, but instead revealed the Americas to European powers. This discovery unleashed an era of exploration, conquest, and colonization that transformed Spain into the first true global empire. Isabella's decision to back Columbus was not an impulsive gamble, but an extension of her broader strategy: to expand Spain's influence, to spread Christianity, and to secure wealth that would strengthen her kingdom. The impact of this single choice cannot be overstated. The influx of silver and gold from the New World in the decades that followed fueled Spain's rise as a European superpower. The establishment of colonies brought vast resources and trade networks under Spanish control. Though Isabella did not live to see the full consequences, it was her willingness to support exploration that set Spain on this path. Just as importantly, she framed exploration not only as a quest for riches, but as a mission to spread Christianity. She insisted that conversion of indigenous peoples be a priority, intertwining Spain's imperial expansion with its religious mission. This blend of politics, faith, and ambition became the hallmark of the Spanish Empire, and it began with Isabella's choice to listen to a Genoese sailor who others dismissed. Isabella also recognized that a strong kingdom required educated leaders and an informed clergy. She invested in education, founding institutions of learning and supporting universities. She patronized scholars, encouraged the translation of important texts, and strengthened the training of clergy to ensure that religious reform went hand in hand with political consolidation. Her interest in education extended to her own family. She ensured that her daughters received rigorous instruction, unusual for the time, preparing them not only for roles as queens and consorts, but also as political actors. Through dynastic marriages, her daughters extended Spain's influence across Europe, linking the Spanish crown to Portugal, England, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Netherlands. These alliances, carefully arranged, reinforced Spain's central place in European affairs. Isabella's foresight in using marriage diplomacy mirrored the strategies of Eleanor of Aquitaine, but on an even broader scale, demonstrating her ability to think in dynastic terms beyond her own lifetime. Her financial management was equally significant. Castile had been weighed down by corruption and fiscal disorder before her reign. Isabella introduced reforms that strengthened royal revenues, reduced the power of nobles to tax independently, and improved the efficiency of collection. She cracked down on abuses, restored trust in the crown's finances, and ensured that resources were available for military campaigns and exploration. This fiscal discipline, combined with the influx of wealth from the New World, provided the foundation for Spain's dominance in the 16th century. Her ability to manage resources with precision reveals a side of Isabella often overshadowed by the dramatic episodes of conquest and exploration. She was not only a visionary, but but also a capable administrator who understood that dreams required funding to become reality. Isabella's personal qualities were as vital as her policies. She was known for her piety, her sense of justice, and her determination. Chroniclers describe her as austere but compassionate, willing to listen to grievances and to make herself accessible to her subjects. She traveled extensively through her realm, engaging directly with townspeople, nobles, and clergy, reinforcing the idea that the monarchy was not distant but present and attentive. Her presence inspired loyalty, and her moral authority enhanced the legitimacy of her policies. Even her critics acknowledged her strength of character, though some disapproved of her severity. Her legacy is immense. By uniting Castile and Aragon, completing the Reconquista, establishing the Inquisition, financing exploration, and reforming administration, Isabella laid the groundwork for Spain's rise as a global empire. The dynasty she and Ferdinand founded, carried on by their daughter Joanna and her grandson Charles, presided over an empire where the sun literally never set. While Ferdinand was a capable ruler in his own right, it was Isabella's determination, vision, and resilience that gave the partnership its strength. Without her, Spain might have remained a patchwork of kingdoms vulnerable to division. With her, it became a unified power poised to dominate Europe and the New World. Yet Isabella was not a simple figure of triumph. Her policies carried consequences that shaped history in both positive and tragic ways. The expulsion of Jews and Muslims from Spain in the same year as Columbus's voyage deprived the country of communities that had enriched its culture and economy for centuries. The Inquisition created fear and conformity at the cost of intellectual diversity. The colonization of the Americas brought wealth, but also suffering and destruction to indigenous peoples. To understand Isabella fully, one must see both the brilliance of her vision and the costs of her decisions. She was a woman of her time, guided by faith and ambition, whose choices reflected the values of her age, but also pushed the boundaries of what a queen could achieve. Isabella of Castile thus represents the culmination of the hidden powerhouse, the queen who was not content to act in the shadows, but who claimed authority in full view. She stood beside her husband as an equal partner, shaped the identity of her kingdom, and set in motion global transformations. Like Theodora, she was decisive in crisis. Like Eleanor, she was a master of diplomacy. Like Catherine the Great, she understood how to turn opportunity into empire. Her life demonstrates that power is not simply the prerogative of kings. In Isabella's case, power was seized, molded, and projected onto the world by a queen whose determination still echoes in history. Queen Victoria's life and reign reveal another form of hidden power, different from Isabella's audacious empire-building or Eleanor's restless diplomacy, yet equally transformative in its quiet persistence. Isabella had reshaped Spain through conquest, faith, and exploration, leaving a global imprint defined by decisive action. Victoria, ruling centuries later in a very different world, faced challenges not of territorial unification or religious conformity, but of adapting monarchy itself to the demands of a rapidly changing society. She lived at a time when industrialization, urbanization, political reform, and scientific discovery were redefining the nature of power. Unlike her predecessors, she could not command armies in the field or shape foreign conquests through her personal leadership. Instead, she wielded influence through family, correspondence, image, and a subtle form of diplomacy that became as effective in its way as Isabella's more dramatic strategies. Her innovation lay in recognizing that monarchy in the 19th century required a new kind of authority, one that rested not simply on sovereignty, but on cultural presence, moral example, and the creation of enduring networks that bound Europe together. When Victoria ascended the throne in the year 1837, she was a young woman of barely 18 years. Her position was precarious in many respects. The monarchy had suffered a decline in prestige due to the extravagance and scandals of her uncles, George IV and William IV. Parliament had assumed increasing power, and public opinion had become a formidable force. To succeed, Victoria had to re-establish the dignity of the crown without overstepping into areas now firmly under parliamentary control. Her solution was to fashion a monarchy that was both visible and approachable, a monarchy that retained its aura of tradition while appearing in harmony with middle-class values of duty, family, and respectability. In this sense, she was a quiet innovator, reshaping the image of monarchy so that it could survive in the age of democracy and industrial capitalism. Her marriage to Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha was central to this project. Albert was not popular with everyone at first, being German and perceived as an outsider. Yet together, Victoria and Albert created a model of domestic life that resonated deeply with the public. By emphasizing family, moral virtue, and a sense of industrious duty, they made the monarchy appear as a mirror of respectable middle-class households. Portraits and engravings depicted them with their children, not in grand regalia, but in scenes of intimacy and affection. This was no accident. Victoria understood the power of image, and she used it to cultivate loyalty. She was not a warrior queen like Isabella or a traveling diplomat like Eleanor, but through the careful projection of her role as wife and mother, she stabilized the crown in an era of skepticism. The monarchy became not only a political institution but also a cultural symbol, embodying values that reassured a society undergoing relentless change. Victoria's influence extended well beyond the British Isles through her children. She and Albert had 9 children, and each marriage was arranged with an eye toward strengthening ties with European royal houses. Her descendants married into the thrones of Germany, Russia, Greece, Denmark, Norway, and Spain. This web of connections earned her the title Grandmother of Europe. Through her children and grandchildren, Victoria effectively knit together a network of alliances that shaped the politics of the continent for generations. Monarchs such as Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany and Tsarina Alexandra of Russia were her grandchildren, as were kings and queens across Scandinavia and the Mediterranean. In an age when nationalism and political conflict were intensifying, these dynastic ties created bonds that both restrained and complicated rivalries. While they did not prevent wars, they established a level of personal diplomacy that softened relations and provided channels of communication. Victoria's legacy in this regard was enduring, and its echoes can still be traced in the European royal families of today. Her method of exercising influence was subtle but firm. She wrote constantly, maintaining an enormous correspondence with ministers, relatives, and foreign sovereigns. Through letters, she expressed her views, offered advice, and exerted gentle pressure. While she could not dictate policy, her opinion mattered, and ministers often found her persistence difficult to ignore. She was particularly skilled in framing her interventions as expressions of duty and maternal concern, which made them difficult to dismiss as mere interference. This form of soft power, shaping attitudes and decisions through personal relationships, was a hallmark of her reign. It was not dramatic, but it was effective, especially in an era when diplomacy often rested as much on personal trust as on formal treaties. Victoria also understood the value of visibility. She made royal visits a central part of her strategy, traveling across Britain and, when possible, abroad. These visits allowed her to engage directly with her subjects, presenting the monarchy as connected to the people rather than aloof. Industrial exhibitions, naval reviews, and ceremonies of national importance became occasions where she appeared as the embodiment of national unity. Her presence lent legitimacy to public events, and in turn, these events reinforced her image as a queen who was both dignified and engaged. She was careful, however, to maintain balance. While she embraced greater public exposure, she also upheld strict traditions of protocol, ensuring that the monarchy did not lose its sense of mystique. This careful blend of accessibility and formality became a precedent for modern royal families, who continue to navigate the same balance today. Her reign also coincided with Britain's emergence as the leading global power. The British Empire expanded across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific, making Victoria not only Queen of the United Kingdom but also Empress of India. The assumption of the imperial title in the year 1876 symbolized Britain's global reach, yet Victoria approached it with an understanding that the monarchy had to represent both continuity at home and authority abroad. Her role as empress was less about direct rule and more about embodying the grandeur of empire. Through ceremonies, proclamations, and her patronage of imperial causes, she lent a human face to Britain's expansion. The title itself was not her invention. Benjamin Disraeli promoted it for political reasons. But Victoria embraced it, recognizing that monarchy in the age of empire required a new dimension of symbolism. Victoria's legacy also lay in her ability to modernize royal protocol. She introduced precedents that reshaped how monarchs engaged with their subjects. Court life under her was less extravagant than under her predecessors, reflecting her personal values of morality and restraint. Public ceremonies became more standardized and more closely tied to national identity. The way monarchs appeared in print, photography, and later in early media reflected Victoria's understanding that image was power. She did not simply allow herself to be portrayed. She actively curated her image, presenting herself as a symbol of stability, tradition, and moral authority. This precedent continues in the modern monarchy, where careful management of image remains central to sustaining relevance. The personal side of Victoria should not be overlooked, for it was part of what gave her such enduring influence. She was deeply attached to Albert, and his death in the year 1861 devastated her. Her prolonged mourning, during which she withdrew from much public life, risked alienating her subjects. Yet even in grief, she reshaped the monarchy. Her widowhood became part of her public persona, reinforcing her image as a woman of deep loyalty and moral seriousness. Statues and memorials to Albert across Britain reinforced the connection between monarchy and the ideals of love, family, and duty. Though her seclusion was criticized, it also humanized her, making her appear as a figure who shared the sorrows of her people. Her grief, like her domesticity, became part of her strategy of image, whether consciously or not. The endurance of Victoria's innovations is evident in how later monarchs have operated. The careful balance of tradition and adaptation, the emphasis on family and morality, the cultivation of soft power through correspondence and ceremonial presence. All of these elements can be traced back to her reign. Even her dynastic vision continues to shape royal houses. The current monarchs of Britain, Spain, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, among others, are descended from her, making her influence more than symbolic. She literally reshaped the genetic and dynastic map of Europe. Victoria's quiet innovation was not without its limitations. Her conservatism sometimes put her at odds with reform movements, and her reluctance to embrace more radical changes in governance reflected her desire to preserve tradition. She often clashed with prime ministers when she felt her authority was being diminished. Yet her ability to adapt enough to survive ensured that the monarchy endured through an era that might otherwise have swept it away. Unlike the French monarchy, which collapsed amid revolution, the British crown remained intact, precisely because Victoria redefined its role to suit the times. In the sweep of history, Victoria may not appear as daring as Isabella or as dramatic as Eleanor, but her impact was no less profound. She did not conquer lands personally or lead armies, but she preserved and modernized an institution that might otherwise have withered. She extended her influence across Europe through her children, cultivated loyalty through image and protocol, and projected soft power through correspondence and ceremony. In doing so, she demonstrated that monarchy could survive not by clinging stubbornly to outdated forms, but by quietly innovating, by finding new ways to embody authority in a changing world. The threads of her legacy remain visible today. When modern monarchs appear at public events, balancing accessibility with dignity, they follow patterns she established. When European royal families trace their lineage, they find her at the center. When historians speak of the Victorian era as a time of moral authority and imperial grandeur, they speak of a period shaped not only by industrial might and political reform, but also by a queen who redefined what monarchy could be. Isabella had built a nation and set an empire in motion. Victoria ensured that monarchy itself could adapt to a world of empires, parliaments, and publics. Both women, though centuries apart and in vastly different contexts, embody the enduring truth that queens could be architects of history, not merely companions to kings. Building from the lasting impact of Queen Victoria and the way she redefined monarchy for a new era, it becomes natural to look at how her legacy resonates in the lives and choices of contemporary royal women. The crown, once inseparable from conquest, land, and rigid ceremony, has now shifted into a role that balances tradition with relevance. Modern society does not expect queens or consorts to command armies or arrange dynastic marriages to prevent wars. Instead, they are asked to embody continuity while connecting with people in practical, tangible ways. They must use their position to highlight causes, promote cultural and social welfare, and maintain respect for an institution that often struggles to justify its place in a world of democratic values. This evolution has placed royal wives in positions where their influence is not loud or obvious, but nonetheless deeply significant. Their lives echo the qualities of hidden powerhouses from the past, though expressed through 21st-century forms of service, advocacy, and visibility. Queen Camilla of the United Kingdom provides a telling example of this shift. For much of her life, she was a figure of public scrutiny and controversy, her relationship with Charles overshadowed by the presence and memory of Diana, Princess of Wales. Yet her transition from being perceived as an outsider to her current position as queen consort demonstrates not only resilience, but also the ways in which royal wives can redefine themselves through steady service. Camilla has not attempted to rival the glamour or emotional appeal associated with Diana. Instead, she has carefully and quietly established her own identity rooted in patronage, public engagement, and advocacy. Her championing of causes related to literacy, domestic violence, and osteoporosis reflects a deliberate choice to connect her work with areas of real societal concern. By focusing on issues that affect ordinary lives, she has positioned herself as a consort who uses her influence to amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard. Her advocacy for literacy is particularly significant. She has supported reading initiatives, visited schools and libraries, and spoken about the importance of books in education and imagination. Literacy is not a glamorous cause, yet it is foundational to social progress. By aligning herself with it, Camilla has shown that royalty can serve not by offering dramatic interventions, but by consistently drawing attention to issues that matter. Her work with organizations addressing domestic violence also illustrates the power of her role. Survivors of abuse often face silence and stigma, and the involvement of a queen consort helps break down barriers of shame. By lending her voice, she provides legitimacy and visibility to campaigns that can save lives. In this way, she mirrors earlier queens who operated in hidden yet impactful ways, though her methods reflect a society that values advocacy and awareness over direct command. At the same time, Camilla represents continuity. She has embraced traditional patronages that link the monarchy to cultural life, including the arts and heritage preservation. This blend of tradition and advocacy ensures that her role is not seen as purely ceremonial. Instead, it becomes a living reminder that monarchy can adapt without losing its historical roots. The fact that she has managed to establish credibility after decades of being portrayed negatively demonstrates her ability to innovate quietly and patiently. Her story underscores the theme of endurance and adaptability that runs through the history of royal wives. In Spain, Queen Letizia offers another dimension to the modern role of consorts. Unlike many of her predecessors, she did not come from a royal or noble background. She was a journalist, a professional woman with her own career, before marrying into the Spanish royal family. Her experience in journalism provided her with skills in communication, empathy, and public engagement, which she has effectively transferred to her role as queen consort. Letizia has chosen to focus much of her work on public health, education, and social inclusion, areas that directly affect the daily lives of her people. This emphasis aligns with the expectation that modern royals should contribute to society in visible, practical ways, rather than merely embody tradition. Her commitment to public health is especially notable. She has advocated for awareness around rare diseases, mental health, and healthy lifestyles, often attending conferences and speaking with medical professionals and patients. By addressing issues that are sometimes neglected by mainstream discourse, she brings attention and resources to communities that benefit greatly from her involvement. Her focus on education is equally important. She has worked to highlight the importance of equal access, literacy, and early childhood development, reinforcing the message that a strong society depends on investing in its youth. These choices reflect not only her professional background, but also a broader recognition that monarchy must prove its relevance by engaging directly with challenges faced by ordinary citizens. Letizia's approach also demonstrates the importance of authenticity. Because she was a commoner before her marriage, her connection with the public is often framed in terms of relatability. She does not represent ancient lineage alone, but also the blending of modern life with traditional monarchy. Her presence in the Spanish royal family helps bridge the gap between an institution rooted in centuries of tradition and a society that values equality and transparency. This duality is part of the broader transformation of queenship in the modern era. Where Isabella of Castile once united kingdoms through faith and conquest, Letizia seeks to unite her nation through advocacy, education, and inclusivity. Both women, in their own ways, reveal that queenship has always been about identifying the needs of the moment and responding with vision and action. Looking across Europe and beyond, the role of contemporary royal wives continues to evolve. Queens and consorts today often focus on humanitarian issues, sustainable development, gender equality, and mental health. Their platforms allow them to champion causes with global resonance, even when they do not wield formal political authority. Unlike their predecessors, they cannot directly shape treaties or command armies, but they can influence public opinion, raise awareness, and build bridges between institutions. This form of soft power is deeply rooted in the legacy of figures like Victoria, who understood the strength of image and moral authority. The difference is that modern queens must engage in a world of instant communication, media scrutiny, and democratic accountability. Their ability to adapt determines not only their personal success, but also the continued relevance of monarchy as an institution. These modern roles echo the same themes that run through history. Empress Theodora wielded influence through law and resilience, Catherine the Great through reform and expansion, Eleanor of Aquitaine through diplomacy and cultural patronage, Isabella of Castile through faith and empire building, and Victoria through modernization and dynastic networks. Today, figures like Camilla and Letizia continue this tradition in forms suited to their time. They demonstrate that queenship has never been static. It evolves with society, and its survival depends on its capacity to meet new challenges while honoring its heritage. What is striking about the present era is the degree of visibility. Past queens often worked behind the scenes, their influence obscured by chroniclers or overshadowed by their husbands. Modern queens operate in the full glare of media attention, where every gesture, outfit, and word is analyzed. This visibility can be a burden, but it is also an opportunity. It allows them to connect with people on a scale unimaginable in earlier centuries. When Letizia speaks at a health conference or Camilla visits a shelter for survivors of abuse, their messages reach not only those present, but also millions who follow their work through newspapers, television, and social media. This amplifies their influence and turns their patronages into platforms for global awareness. At the same time, they must navigate the tension between tradition and modernity. Monarchy remains tied to ceremonies, symbols, and protocols that remind the public of continuity. Yet without adaptation, these traditions risk appearing irrelevant. The skill of modern queens lies in their ability to embody both. Camilla maintains historic patronages and attends traditional events, yet she also addresses contemporary social issues. Letizia participates in royal ceremonies, yet she also brings the perspective of a professional woman into her role. This balance reflects Victoria's legacy of blending dignity with engagement, showing that innovation and tradition can coexist within the same figure. The endurance of monarchy in the 21st century owes much to these women. While kings and heirs often attract attention for political or ceremonial reasons, it is frequently the queens and consorts who provide continuity through their sustained advocacy and visibility. They are not rulers in the formal sense, yet they shape how monarchy is perceived, whether as outdated spectacle or as a living institution that contributes to society. Their work demonstrates that power need not always be loud to be effective. By consistently highlighting issues of health, education, culture, and inclusion, they anchor monarchy in relevance. In this way, modern queens are heirs to a long lineage of hidden powerhouses. Their tools are different, their challenges distinct, but their purpose remains familiar: to use their positions not merely for personal prestige, but for shaping the destiny of their nations. From Theodora's legal reforms to Eleanor's diplomacy, from Isabella's empire building to Victoria's modernization, and now to Camilla's advocacy and Letizia's public health campaigns, we see a continuous thread of women redefining what it means to be royal. They remind us that history is not only the story of crowns worn, but also of influence exercised, often quietly, often persistently, yet always with lasting effect. The future will no doubt bring new forms of this influence. As societies become more diverse and global challenges more complex, queens and consorts will continue to adapt, just as their predecessors did. They may focus more on climate change, mental health, digital literacy, or global inequality, but the essence will remain the same: finding ways to serve, to connect, and to preserve the relevance of monarchy in changing times. What began as dynastic marriages to secure borders has become a vocation of advocacy to secure public trust. The methods have changed, but the responsibility remains, carried now by women who stand not in the shadow of their husbands, but alongside them, shaping the course of monarchy with quiet strength. From the examination of how contemporary queens like Camilla of the United Kingdom and Letizia of Spain embody their roles, the broader theme that emerges is the continued importance of royal partners in sustaining the monarchy in a modern world. While sovereigns hold the formal power, public imagination and trust often hinge just as much on the presence and actions of the partners who stand beside them. These figures, sometimes underestimated, are vital to shaping the tone, humanity, and cultural impact of monarchy itself. Just as Theodora stood beside Justinian in Byzantium, as Eleanor balanced the volatile dynastic politics of medieval Europe, as Isabella partnered with Ferdinand to shape a global empire, and as Victoria used her marriage to Albert to redefine domestic virtue at the center of monarchy, so too do today's royal consorts serve as critical pillars in ensuring continuity and relevance. The forms have changed, but the function remains the same: to make monarchy live not merely as a political construct, but as a cultural institution anchored in both tradition and public service. In the 21st century, when monarchies no longer control the levers of state and often operate under constitutional limits, their survival depends on legitimacy in the eyes of the people. This legitimacy cannot rest solely on inherited rights or ancient ceremonies. It must be built continuously through visible contributions to social welfare, cultural vitality, and national identity. Queens and royal partners play an essential role in this process. By connecting with communities, advocating for causes, and embodying values that resonate with society, they ensure that monarchy is not a relic but a living institution. Their work softens the image of formality, making monarchy feel approachable without eroding its dignity. In this sense, they serve as the interpreters of monarchy, translating centuries of tradition into forms that align with contemporary expectations. Public perception is perhaps the most critical arena where these partners exert influence. A sovereign may symbolize national continuity, but it is often through the consort that people feel an emotional connection. Consider again Queen Camilla, whose path to acceptance was long and fraught with public doubt. Her deliberate alignment with causes that affect real lives, her visible empathy toward vulnerable groups, and her steady commitment to literacy and health initiatives have transformed her image from controversial figure to respected consort. This transformation is not only personal, it has implications for the monarchy itself. By re-establishing trust, she has reinforced the credibility of the crown, showing how individual effort by a royal partner can mend reputational fractures in an institution. Queen Letizia demonstrates another dimension of this shaping of perception. By embodying the role of a professional, modern woman who transitioned into monarchy, she brings relatability and authenticity. Her careful engagement with issues of health, education, and equality creates a narrative of monarchy that is aligned with the concerns of ordinary citizens. She does not appear as distant or unapproachable, but as someone who understands social realities, precisely because she once worked among them. This relatability ensures that the Spanish monarchy maintains relevance in a society that might otherwise question its necessity. Through Letizia's example, it becomes clear that the partner's role is not ornamental but strategic, embedding the monarchy in the lived experiences of the nation. This dynamic extends beyond Britain and Spain. Across Europe and other parts of the world, royal partners take up causes that broaden the monarchy's reach and meaning. Queen Mathilde of Belgium focuses on child welfare, education, and the empowerment of young people. Queen Maxima of the Netherlands champions financial inclusion and sustainable development, using her platform to influence even international institutions. Crown Princess Mary of Denmark advocates for social inclusion, health, and the rights of women and children, while Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway brings attention to literature, mental health, and issues facing marginalized communities. These women collectively show that the role of consort has become an essential part of the monarchy's adaptation to global challenges. Their patronages are not superficial. They connect monarchy to causes that transcend national borders and resonate with international audiences. The way these royal women engage in philanthropy and public life also reflects careful strategy. Public appearances are not random, but deliberate acts of symbolism. When a queen consort visits a hospital, attends a school, or opens a shelter, the event is both practical and symbolic. It draws attention to the institution being visited, often bringing media coverage and increased funding, while simultaneously presenting the monarchy as compassionate, engaged, and responsive. These appearances become moments of connection between an ancient institution and contemporary society. They remind the public that monarchy, though steeped in tradition, has a role to play in addressing modern needs. Philanthropy, too, is a critical tool. By aligning themselves with charities, foundations, and global campaigns, royal partners amplify their impact far beyond ceremonial duties. Their involvement often secures visibility and legitimacy for causes that might otherwise struggle for attention. In doing so, they transform their symbolic capital into practical support. This dynamic has deep historical roots. Eleanor of Aquitaine's patronage of culture, Isabella's educational reforms, and Victoria's sponsorship of exhibitions all reflect earlier forms of philanthropic influence. The difference today lies in scale and immediacy. With modern media, a single appearance or speech by a royal consort can spark global conversations, mobilize resources, and alter perceptions almost overnight. The strategic nature of this work cannot be overstated. Modern monarchies face criticism, ranging from questions of cost to accusations of irrelevance. In such an environment, the consistent public engagement of consorts acts as a buffer, reminding societies that monarchy gives back in tangible ways. By championing causes of social importance, royal partners demonstrate that their roles extend beyond luxury or ceremony. They provide the human face of monarchy, grounding it in compassion and service. This strategic deployment of visibility, combined with long-term commitment to philanthropic work, contributes directly to the stability of royal institutions. Without these efforts, monarchy risks being perceived as disconnected privilege. With them, monarchy maintains a sense of purpose and legitimacy. It is also important to recognize the continuity with the past. Though the platforms differ, the essence of influence remains consistent. Theodora used her influence to shape Byzantine law. Catherine the Great used hers to expand and reform Russia. Eleanor of Aquitaine steered diplomacy across two kingdoms. Isabella laid the foundations of empire. Victoria modernized monarchy for the industrial age. And today's queens connect their institutions with the pressing needs of modern societies. In every era, the survival and success of monarchy have depended not only on the sovereign, but also on the partner who interprets and humanizes royal power. These unsung partners ensure that monarchy is not simply an inheritance of crowns and ceremonies, but a living institution responsive to the times. In concluding this exploration, it becomes clear that the enduring appeal of monarchy lies as much in these consorts as in the sovereigns themselves. Their ability to embody compassion, to represent continuity while adapting to change, and to champion causes that resonate with the public ensures that monarchy remains relevant in a rapidly shifting global landscape. They serve as both anchors and innovators, drawing from tradition while responding to new challenges. Their presence softens the rigid edges of monarchy, making it relatable, approachable, and humane. The legacy they leave is not measured only in the institutions they patronize or the causes they highlight, but in the way they shape public memory of monarchy itself. When future generations look back at this era, they will see not only kings and sovereigns, but also the queens and consorts who made monarchy meaningful through service. From Camilla's advocacy for literacy and domestic safety to Letizia's emphasis on health and education, from Maxima's work on financial inclusion to Mary's championing of equality, these women are defining what monarchy means in the 21st century. They are, in every sense, the quiet innovators and hidden powerhouses of our age. The stability of royal institutions in the modern world is not an accident. It is the result of careful adaptation, much of it carried out by these partners who understand that visibility, service, and authenticity are as critical as crowns and ceremonies. Their work ensures that monarchy continues to capture public imagination not as a relic of the past, but as a relevant and enduring presence. In their strategic appearances, their philanthropic engagement, and their steadfast commitment to service, they embody the essential truth that monarchy survives not only through inheritance, but through continual renewal. And in this renewal, the role of the unsung partner is not secondary but central, shaping legacies and securing the place of monarchy in a world that demands both tradition and progress.